So I'll try to move through this fairly quickly so that we have plenty of time for questions at the end. So the first thing before I actually start showing you the system is it's a very state-based model. So at the top, we have the state itself, which would be Tennessee. And then below it, we have the programs. And kind of in between, we have what are called hubs and cohorts that are just basically ways for you to group programs together. So this is our test site, and Wisconsin did a lot of testing for us and graciously offered this as an example. So for example, if I wanted to group the meadow and the ocean into one hub, which they did as the training test hub, then that allows you to say run reports for training test hub and automatically pulls in all of the programs below it. In the same way, you could create a user for a hub like training test hub, and that user would have access to the meadow and the ocean, any other programs that are below that hub. The same kind of thing for the cohorts is they're just used to group programs and make things a little more logical and give you some more flexibility. For the programs, we collect some basic information. You can see here, one of the most important is probably, is probably the program type. We have a lot here, and you can select one or many, and that list may be expanding from our other conversations with other states. One thing to note about the program types is if you select family child care or group family child care currently, then that program will see a different version of the benchmarks quality. There's a specific family child care version that they will see as opposed to the 2.0 version. And that's already coded in the system and handled automatically. So once the state leadership enters all this information, they enter their hubs, cohorts, and programs, then they have to enter the users for all of those programs. And that's pretty basic. I can quickly show you how they would enter, but you would just put in this basic information, and then the user will get a confirmation email in how to set up their account and finish things up, and then they'll have access to whatever program you give them access to. And then once they're in, they can finally start entering data. So on the left, actually here, let me zoom in a little. I know my screen is higher resolution than most. There we go. On the left here, you can see the different types of items we collect currently. Some of them are not technically pyramid related, like the ages and stages questionnaire, social emotional. New York asked us to add that for themselves. And we also collect other screenings and assessments for children. So the ASQ SE has its own form, so it's its own separate table and is recorded differently than any of the others. But we also allow you to enter information for DECA, for what are a few of the others? Well, we'll see in a second once this loads. But because this is more of a generic recording of screens and assessments, it's less detailed than the ASQSE, I guess is the way I would put it. So as you can see here, we just collect the screen date, then you can select your type from this list, even if it's an assessment like a TS Gold or something like that. Then you select the child, the score, and set the score type. And you can do that for all of them. The layout doesn't change based on that, but it allows you to have some flexibility, and then you can have reports based off of this information. Let's see, let's go ahead with the behavior incident reports. Now the interface for all of these forms on the left is basically the same. You've got this dashboard, which sometimes has a chart, sometimes has some other items down below, and has a table that includes all of the data entered for the program. A thing to note is if you're logged in as, say, what I am now, an application admin or a state level role or a hub level role, you'll see multiple programs here. So currently we only have data for the Meadow, but if, say, there was another program 1, then you would also see their data here as well, because you're allowed to based on your role. If you're in just as a program level role, you'll only see information for your program. If you're in as a hub level role, you see information for all the programs beneath you. State level, you see everything for your entire state. Yeah, so the dashboard, and then each one has a data entry form that acts in the same way. I mean, all the controls are very similar, and you also always have this print option available. So you can save it as a PDF, you can save it as a doc file or so on, or you can just print it straight to your printer. And so that's what we collect for the behavior incident. One thing to note about children and employees is we recently implemented protections for private information. So certain roles are allowed to see children names and employee names and employee emails, and certain roles are not. And I could give you an entire list on our help and training page that gives you information based on what these every role is and what you're allowed to do. But that would probably take a while, so I'll just get back to the demo here. So basically, there are a bunch of different roles, and each one has different levels of permissions as to what they can do. It allows you some flexibility in how you set up programs themselves and set up your state leadership team as well. So then we got the benchmarks of quality. And now you see, since I'm in as a state level role as an admin, I can see both the 2.0 and the FCC, just in case you have both family child cares and regular programs. And then within them, you can see the details. So for each one, you just put in the information, select the indicators, whether they're in place, partially in place, or not in place, all the way down to the bottom. And then it just gives you a total with a percentage of total in place. The FCC is basically the same, just slightly different indicators, as I'm sure you're aware. Then we have where the children are recorded. So a thing to note about this is it's usually best to enter things in a certain order because of the way the system relates items to each other. So for instance, you have to enter a child before you can enter a behavior incident for that child. You have to enter a classroom before you enter a behavior incident for that specific classroom, and so on. So basically, you have to do a little upfront work before you can actually enter stuff like that. But it helps it to be fully relational and allows us to do reporting on that is much more dynamic than it would be if it was just put in this text box with the child's name, and then you don't have any linking. For the child, we collect some basic information, including a program identifier number. This is just an open text field. Programs can define this however they want. They can also, if they want, they could just put in a single letter for the last name. I know some programs do that, even though we now have protections for the first and last name. They don't want to enter the full name into the system. That's fine. There just has to be something in that last name field. All these other items we collect, including why the child left and when they left, the program itself, and then we have notes that the program could put in about the child, statuses like enrolled. Let's look at a couple others. There's enrolled, extended absence, temporary removal, and full removal from program. And those can all be edited and added as the program sees fit. And then the more important part, the classroom assignments for the child. So we use these classroom assignments to determine, say on the BIR, you select this child, then we look at the classroom assignments to filter the list of classrooms. So we make sure that the program is entering information properly, like say, this child, Aria, is only assigned to this classroom. So you wouldn't be able to select any other classroom on the behavior incident for this child until you add a new assignment. Classrooms, we collect some basic information and they just display all the employees and the children that are assigned to it. So we have some basic information up here. And this is what these infant toddler classroom, preschool classroom help determine on our reports if we should look for teapot or tippy toes forms for these specific classrooms. And I'll show you that later on when we get to reports. So, and then we just have the children assigned and the employees assigned. And now down to classroom coaching logs. So for the coaching log, we collect both the coach and the who is being coached at the time, including the who's being coached, their job at the time. I'm not sure if this is a pyramid level thing, but New York asked for it, so it's there if you want to use it. And then we have all the information for the coaching log itself. So for employees, we collect basic information like name, and again, that ID number. So if, say, I was in as a role that is not allowed to see first and last name, these would just show up as hidden, and then the ID number would be all that I could see. Yeah, same thing with the email. The email would show up as hidden. So here's the information we collect, including trainings, job functions in the program, and their classroom assignments. There are some protected trainings that only state leadership are allowed to enter. For example, the practice-based coaching trainings and the reliable observer trainings for teapot and tippy toes. Those have to be entered by state leadership because, well, New York asked us to do it that way so that they could make sure that they had their certificate in hand that this person passed the training, is ready to do these observations, or is ready to do these coaching logs. We have a specific page, this bulk training edition page, that allows you to quickly do that. So you would just search up a name and then you can quickly add all of the trainings or just one or two. So once an employee has an observer training for tippy toes, then they can be selected on the form itself. So as you can see, we select the classroom, and then on the observer, we also have this help icon to fully explain why or why not someone may show up in the list. And then you select these employees that are both active in the program and have the proper training before this point in time. And then we also allow you to add as many as you want, as many participants as you want, and their specific roles. So if I wanted to add a few more teaching assistants that happen to be in the classroom during this observation, I can add as many as I want to that. And you can even add multiple lead teachers if necessary. And then down below, we have the key practices, the red flags, and the specific red flags that are observed. Teapot's basically the same. It just has, slightly different indicators, or key practices, I guess I should say. And also it requires teapot observer training as opposed to tippy toes observer training, of course. All the way down. So that's about it for the forms we collect, but we also allow programs, hubs, and a few other roles to upload files at any time. They could be anything from action plans to certificates to anything you want to share at a program hub or even state level. So I could upload something because I'm in as a state. I could go ahead and upload a PDF, a doc, anything I want to the state level, and everyone who's in a program underneath that state will have access to it at any time they want. So go ahead and do that doc file, throw a little description in, and that's all set. One thing to note is, since I entered this at a state level, only state level roles will be able to delete it. So like someone at a program level couldn't delete your state level upload. All right, that's about it for the forms. I'm going to quickly look at the chat because I see it's not questions. Okay, perfect. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to reports and some of the other sections? Okay. If you do have a question while I'm explaining, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. And let's move on. So before I go to reports, I'll quickly go back to that help and training page you saw briefly. On this page, we have training videos on how to use the system and even how to get your user account set up on a variety of topics. And we've got 12 of those. They're about 2 to 4 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes long each. They're freely available on YouTube, and I will get the playlist link and put it in the chat after I'm done with the demo here. It's fully available. We even have a 5-minute overview video that covers a lot less than this, but you could give to someone to just give an example of how the system works. On this page, we also have the roles and their descriptions, as I showed earlier. This is what you would access to decide what role you would want to give someone, or you would point to programs to request what role they want, I guess. So for example, this aggregate viewer is program level. So it's for a single program. They're allowed to view children names, allowed to view protected employee information, but they are not allowed to view specific behavior incident reports. They're only allowed to view the dashboard. They're not allowed to add forms, not allowed to edit anything. They're not allowed to delete anything, except for news and uploaded files that they uploaded themselves. And then below that, we have a few frequently asked questions and some tips and tricks that we've worked out from all the other programs that have gone into the system. So other than that, we also have the support ticket page that allows you to send in a support ticket directly to us with either a question or a technical issue or anything like that. You just fill out the subject and the description, click send, and it'll go directly to our tech support team, which is usually me and a few other programmers and tech support people. We also, before I get into the reports, we have the news. It's pretty basic, so you can enter news for your whole state. Hubs can enter it for themselves. You just select it from here, and it could be anything, but it is just a text-based field. So for example, every item you would enter would show up as a separate bullet. So in this case, someone from Wisconsin entered this on 6/1/21. And that shows up for everyone in the whole state, but you can just go ahead and hide that if you want, and that'll stay hidden until some more recent news comes out. We also use the news for application updates. So when we make changes to the system, you'll see this pop up in your bottom left. You'll say, oh, okay, the ASQSE just got a new field, or now I can enter benchmarks of quality community forms or something like that. So that would show up down there, and you can also access it through this link at the top. All right, finally on to the reports. Let me just check the chat because I saw one thing come in. Does access to this data system give you access to updates? Oh, yeah. So say another form is developed by the consortium, would we have access to that as well? It's a good question. If the consortium decided to include it and worked through the contract process with us to get it entered into the system, yes. If a paper form is developed by the consortium like that day, no, because it would still need to be coded and developed and put into the system. But at a state level, you could go ahead and put news in, like say you knew of this paper form or this Excel spreadsheet or something that the consortium developed. You could put that into the news, include a link, and then everyone in the state would see that and they'd be like, okay, we can go look at this.
I guess what I mean is if something gets developed and it becomes a data tool, would it be like an add-on? Are we because we've got this data system, is it something that would get up, like we would have access to it eventually? What is that kind of, I certainly understand that it wouldn't be like day of. Is
So
this
yeah,
built out?
we've been working with Rob for a while on the idea of how the consortium is going to work with us. And the way he's described it to us is that it's going to be all one package. There's not going to be add-ons. If it's something that's important for the consortium, it's going to be available for all members of the consortium. Now, if and he wants to keep everything that's developed to be something that's important for the whole consortium. So if you, as the state of Tennessee, for example, have a very important specific form that has nothing to do with the rest of the consortium, but you have to have it in here, there are methods at that point where we could discuss the concept of putting it in here where no one else would see it, just Tennessee. So it is possible that some other state will put in a form that you won't see, but not the consortium. Rob's going to do that. So if it's something about how PIDS works, it's going to be in here and everyone's going to see it. No additional costs.
Thanks.
No problem. So this is the reports section. This is where you would pull information on ASQSEs, benchmarks of quality, trends, charts, etc. So I'll just quickly show off a couple of the more useful and more exciting reports, because that's what I like to show off. So I'll quickly run this tracking report that we developed for New York. So this is based off of an Excel file that they were used to track the programs themselves to see how they're doing throughout a year. So on the left, you would select a specific year and then select it. Depending on your role, you'll have multiple programs here, or if you're in this program level role, only one program. So I ran it for the Meadow, and then I can see the most recent benchmarks of quality was 913. They only had 2 coaching logs, 1 in September, 1 in October, 5 teapots in the spring, 6 in the fall, 2 tippy toes in the spring, 2 in the fall, and so on. And that just gives you a good overview of how the program is doing. But we also have more detailed reports like the child demographic report. So let me go ahead and show that. One thing to note about the reports is they all have this documentation link here. So if you ever have a question about why something is showing up that way on the report, you can go ahead and click that link and it will bring you to a PDF that explains things about the report, how the criteria on the left, the parameters interact with the report, and so on. And hopefully that should answer your question, but if not, you can always send in a support ticket and ask. These are also fully downloadable, so if you wanted to save something, you just click right up there, or you want to print it. And every report has that, and hopefully they are enough to explain what some common questions might be. So for this report, I have a start date and an end date. I can also filter the whole report by a specific classroom or multiple classrooms, by a specific children race, children ethnicity, and all the way down to dual language learner and individualized education program status. I'm also in as a state role, so I could select specific hubs or specific cohorts to run this for. I'll just leave it as the Meadow with this start date and end date. And I'll just run that, and once it loads, you should see a few charts. So you can see some basic race information and ethnicity information. Then we got some other charts by the other statuses. And finally, this is all the details of the report. So everything that was included in those charts is right here if you want to see specific information. Again, if you're in a role that can't see children names, all the reports take that into account. So this would just say hidden, or it wouldn't show up at all. And then finally, on the last page of every report, or at the bottom of some reports, depending on how they're laid out, we always have the criteria used when this was generated. So specifically, I selected the Meadow for this start date, for this end date. And that allows you to save this. And then if you wanted to say, go back in a month and recreate this to see if anything's changed, you can say, okay, go to the last page. Okay, I ran this for the Meadow with these specific dates. Easily just pop those in and rerun the report to see if anything's changed and if there's any updated information. So if I ran this for, say, the specific classroom, and there's no information, but you can see it shows up right on the end. And that's basically how the reports work. We're continuing to expand the number and the scope of the reports, but right now we have anything from reports on what employees completed certain trainings, to reasons children left the program, to counts on the indicators for the tippy toes and so on. We've got 33 reports. Certain roles are not allowed to see some reports, but for the most part, I think everyone will see around 29, 30 reports. There's some state level reports like, I think the login history report, I think that's probably one of the few that are restricted to a state level. So yeah, that is about it for the system. Except there's one more thing I forgot to mention. So there are some state settings. Right now, they're pretty basic. There is a small widget on the home page. Let me just quickly display that. So this is just simply for displaying due dates for items. So say I wanted to require benchmarks of quality between April 1st and July 1st, but I wanted it due on June 1st. Then I can put in this tooltip due on June 1st. And this is going in for the whole state. So right now, let me get rid of that so it doesn't interfere. If I change over to the Meadow, I should see this is Wisconsin. Oh, I put in the wrong dates, my bad. So if I put the dates incorrectly, you would see a small table show up on the homepage that tells you this benchmarks of quality is due on this date. And it'll tell you if there is any completed in that time or not. There we go. So as you can see, between 0401 and 0701, we want at least one benchmark of quality to be done. In this case, there is one completed. And if there is one completed, I can go ahead and click this, and it should take me to the form itself. So that's it for state settings. And if you didn't want them those due dates to show up, or if you just wanted certain forms only to be added, you have full control of that here. So you can see here, if I don't want them to show, change it to no, save it, and then that table won't show up on the homepage anymore. And then you have some more controls over how that interacts too. You also have this help icon that helps explain how everything works. Besides that, the only other thing would be account management. This is at a user level, so they have full access to update their email, update their phone number, change their password. You also have some control, some customizations over the fireworks you saw on the homepage and the welcome message on the homepage. One somewhat important thing they could do is they could enable two-factor authentication if they have a verified phone number. So this would allow them to, every time they log in, they would get a text from the system on this verified phone number, and then they would have to use that before they can actually get into the system if this is enabled. Just another level of authentication for the users themselves. All right, that is it, I think. So are there any other questions? Okay.
Well,
Yeah. Let me quickly grab, pause the share and grab that link to the training video playlist, and I'll put that in the chat.
And while you're doing that, I do have one other question. So in terms of states that are tracking data for specific children, have states implemented consent forms or agreements for different schools and programs to kind of sign off on to be able to track that, or what does that look like for different states? Do you know?
I am not sure, but from what I know in New York is that they handle that at the program level. And because of the variety and differences between group family childcare, school systems, and so on, they just handle that on their own. They don't bother putting it in the system. Something they could do if they wanted, I suppose, is they could upload a PDF or other file format of that consent just to have a record in the system. But as far as I know, they just handle it on their own currently.
Kind of a follow-up to Catherine's question, then is PMC using the data? So if we're talking local programs into a national data system looking across the states, does that mean PMC has access to the names, or would they just be going off of IDs and that sort of thing, kind of aggregate the data? Because I'm assuming that the end part of the end piece of this is PMC using data as well.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Currently, we don't have any logins or roles for a national level, but if we do, and well, I should say when we do, when we figure that out with Rob and everyone, they will not be able to see specific names. They will not be able to see specific child names, employee names, or employee emails. All those protections will be in place.
In our discussions with Rob so far, his concept of a pyramid national role is more of just seeing a dashboard of data, like how many of children are in our entire national system, just counts, things like that, and not getting any kind of detail about that other than just like, graphs of, maybe which state has so many people, how many children in each state, that kind of thing, but not even getting down to breaking it down into like levels of programs or anything like that. He just wants to keep everything at state level, just numbers, statistics, that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Can everyone see the link in the chat? I just want to make sure it went through.
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, I guess there is one more thing I could mention that I forgot about. We fully allow user agreements for using the system. So Wisconsin has this one drafted. So basically, every time a new user account is created, and the first time they go to log in, they would have to read this document and agree to it before they are actually allowed into the system. And we fully allow the states themselves to customize their agreement. As you can see, this is specific to Wisconsin. New York has their own. And you would be able to put in information. We have a basic template, like we require some of these bullet points, like data and PIDs must be kept confidential and secure, just to make sure that we cover certain items. But besides those specific points that we require, everything else is customizable by you. Other than that, I believe I've covered everything in the system. Are there any last questions? Okay, great.